In the classical kingdom of Judea, a Roman official named Josephus Florus helped himself to 17 talents of silver in the year 66. That was straight out of the temple treasury. It ignited a Jewish protest, which then Florus crushes with a massacre. He had soldiers cutting people down in the market, in the streets. 3,600 Jewish men, women, and children were killed. And even some Jewish leaders were crucified who held Roman citizenship. So then the priests did something that they haven't skipped in 100 years. The temple offered a sacrifice to the Roman emperor, and now it stops. Florus's actions have sparked a zealot uprising. It's now full rebellion, and Roman garrisons were overrun. Florus had to flee the region. It's the collapse of Roman authority. But this is the beginning of the catastrophic First Jewish-Roman War. And I want to introduce you to the historian that records it for us. He witnesses what happens to the temple in the year 70. His name is Flavius Josephus. And in a surprise plot twist, he chose survival over martyrdom in Rome's one-God struggle with Judea. I'm Mr. Hull. This is Ancient History. Welcome to Classical Kingdoms, where history reveals truth and wisdom for your journey. We take the classical approach to history grounded in what actually matters, like the destruction of the temple. Why is that part of the world such a hot spot? I want to hand you something in this lesson, a piece of the past that's crucial to understand today's world, especially Jerusalem. So in this lesson, Rome breaks peace and invades Judea in AD 66. That's siege warfare. And I can introduce you to Josephus. Learn the leading role and moral choice of Flavius Josephus. And then the stakes climb. You'll learn the final fate of Jerusalem and the temple in the year 70. So by the end of this episode, you'll understand how the Romans wipe out the Jewish kingdom and what that means to Roman Christians. Let's begin. The Romans call it Pax Deorum, the peace of the gods. It's during the Pax Romana, we need to keep the gods happy, keep the empire safe. So Rome actually tolerates strict Jewish monotheism. They gave Judaism a special legal status, religio lictia, that is the permitted religion. But they've always had that one God problem. Here's the friction. Jews will not bow down to the emperor as a god. It's in the Ten Commandments. This is the third lesson in our trilogy dealing with this classical kingdom and monotheism. But Rome demands a sign of loyalty. So Julius Caesar and Augustus had worked out the compromise. It worked. The Jewish priesthood would offer a daily sacrifice in the Jerusalem temple on behalf of the Roman emperor and the Roman people to appease the imperial cult every day. 2 lambs, wine, flour, oil, lifted up high on the great altar in front of the sanctuary, not inside the Holy of Holies. And so this was reliable, and for generations, this was the public display of loyalty, a promise, Pax Deorum. But it's broken now. The political loyalty is gone. Rome has to answer. It's time for civil war. But for the Jewish people, Jerusalem is so heavily fortified because the temple is there. It is geographically, the topography of it, it's always been a strategic place. But the importance of the temple, this is where God once dwelled, and it's the only place on earth still where the true sacrifice can be offered. It's the only place where the priesthood mediates forgiveness with God, with that sacrifice. So if it falls, the mechanism to reach God is physically severed. And so let's meet the Roman who's going to try to fix this. Vespasian, he's a battle-hardened Roman general with humble origins, actually, for your typical Roman aristocrat. He's been getting promoted because he's reliable. He's loyal. He's no political threat. He doesn't know it yet, but he's about to get a big test here in Judea. He's going to come with his son, Titus. Titus is the oldest son, and he's kind of the executioner. He's the man that will give the order to turn this temple into ash. Now, should mention now Flavius Josephus, because Vespasian and Titus are Flavians. Josephus has the name Flavius. You'll find out later why that is. But Flavius is a Jew, aristocratic Jewish priest. He's also a rebel commander up in Galilee. And he's about to be indispensable. He is about to become a historian and an eyewitness and a zealot. Now, when Rome decides to crush this uprising, it is not going to just improvise. They're going to have to call in the A-team. When word travels back to Rome that the priesthood has stopped the imperial sacrifice, Nero is on the throne, and Nero responds, but not with the A-team. He sends Gallus, a lower level invader, completely fails. It's disastrous. The Jewish rebels rout the Roman column in a narrow mountain pass. They know the geography better, but the headline is that they capture the eagle of the 12th Legion. That's the sacred standard. A Roman legion sacred standard, that's the metal bird, that every legionary swears that will protect that with his life. It's like a religious failure, religious humiliation. So this is the ultimate provocation. Shame, and it's got to be answered with vengeance and blood. And Nero now has got to go for the A-team, and that is Vespasian. Should have done that the first time. And now it's spring of 67. Vespasian marches into Galilee with Titus and 3 veteran legions, the 5th, the 10th, the 15th, heavily armed, 60,000 men, 60,000 Romans marching south, destroying villages on the way. The Roman sledgehammer strikes this fortress called Jotapata. Now you might see the name Yodfat. If you look that up, it's an incredible story because the commander is Josephus of the Jewish side. Jotapata is led by zealots. It's being, they're inside, and the Romans are going to lay siege for 47 days. This is a little Galilee stronghold, strategic, and they're going to feel the full weight of the Romans, the Roman engineering. 47 days of siege warfare, bombardment, earthen ramps being built up foot by foot toward the battlements. The Roman soldiers do this under shields in the turtle formation, kind of dragging baskets of dirt up the slope while Jewish defenders are pouring boiling oil down on them. The wall finally breaks, and when the Romans make it inside, the slaughter is complete. It's total devastation. So 40,000 defenders, civilians included, die at the hands of the Romans, but Josephus survives. Why? There's a hidden cave, and about 40 of these zealot leaders make it into this cave as they see the walls have been breached. Now feel the weight of this, with the Romans about to find them, and the Romans offer terms of a surrender. These 40 men refuse. What do? They believe it would be dishonorable to surrender, so they decide to kill each other. By each of their own hands, not suicide, which would be dishonorable. They draw lots, and the first man kills the second man, the third man kills the fourth man, and so on, and it goes down the line. But somehow, this twist of fate for the leader Josephus, when he had drawn the last lot, the last two people who are still alive in this cave, Josephus and this one other man, they turn and face each other and they say, hey, why don't we ditch our suicide pact? Let's surrender to the Romans. Maybe we can cut a deal. What kind of moral choice has put them into this situation? Josephus is heading out to negotiate with the Romans. What is your comment on this? Leave your comment. And also, if you haven't clicked the like button or taken a moment to subscribe, it really helps. Classical Kingdoms, all of these lessons stitched together. I've seen kids make these connections since the 90s, and they're always learning with these eureka moments. So Josephus is a little bit of this, and we need to take the classical approach all the way to the end of this story about Josephus. So Josephus is dragged in chains before Vespasian, and Josephus plays an interesting card here because he looks up at the Roman general. He knows Vespasian has no imperial blood. There's no adoption happening and no senatorial advantage, nothing that says emperor. And Josephus says, you're going to be emperor. You're going to be Caesar. Vespasian almost laughs. But there's something that is cunning about this Jewish priest, Josephus, something useful. People say he was prophetic. He was a seer. Vespasian keeps Josephus alive. Again, you could comment if you think this is for flattery, for compliments, keeps him around. As we advance to June of the year 68, Nero, who deals with paranoia. He's been abandoned by his guards. He's already killed his wife, his mother. There's many broken stories. Nero commits suicide in the year 68, June, which means the throne is empty. And what do we do for the next succession, the next emperor? Kind of a struggle, a 4-year civil war time. You've seen it on charts, my chart here, in AD 69, the year of 4 emperors. The year of 4 emperors, each one rising and falling, killed within months. In a 12-month stretch, Rome buries 3 emperors, and it really is like a battlefield in the streets. Why? The Praetorian Guard has taken so much authority over Rome's rule. But we also have problems with German legions, with civil war, people turning on each other. So in July of AD 69, Eastern legions in Egypt with Judea make their own decision. And the legions, not the Praetorian Guard, not the Senate, what do they proclaim? Vespasian. They proclaim Vespasian as emperor, and Josephus is a prophet. His prediction is no longer some desperate trick from the condemned prisoner. It is now true. It's a fact. So Vespasian sails back to Rome to claim the throne. He leaves his son, Titus, in command of the Judean war with one order: finish them. And Josephus, what does he do? He goes with the Romans. He takes the Flavian family name. It's like an adoptio. He's Flavius now, and he chooses the other side. He's a turncoat. He's going to watch the death of his own people, his own capital, from the other side of the wall. By April of AD 70, Titus arrives outside Jerusalem with 4 legions. And he chooses his moment carefully. It's the week before Passover. If you're coming here from lesson 59, that was the week before Passover, going into Jesus' arrival. All kinds of visitors, people are in a pilgrimage to be in near the temple at the time of the Passover, April of the year 70. Jewish families from every corner of the empire, not just the Judea kingdom, they're coming to the holy city. They want to be close to the temple. It's the bridge between them and the forgiveness God would offer. So Titus lets them in. Do you know what's going to happen? Titus lets thousands in, but he locks down and won't let anyone out. He is now weaponizing the size of this population because every mouth inside those walls needs food and they're eating it, but no new food's coming in. Every body inside is going to be drinking water. It's not going to get replenished. Titus plans to starve them. And the worst is yet to come. Inside Jerusalem, they're paralyzed by their own civil war, rebellion about who should run this kingdom, who should be the king of the Jews once we kick the Romans out. Two radical leaders fight each other while the Romans build their siege, warfare, engineering. The two zealot factions force the fight to the death and in the process even burn a city's massive grain reserves, torching their own food, hurting their own people. This is the challenge. I want to make you a classical scholar, and you probably have an idea of how to handle this situation, what they are in. Titus has completed his siege works, and Jerusalem is starving from within. The trap is set, and Titus issues an order that seems like it should be impossible. He wants to build a wall around the entire city, completely seal off Jerusalem, because tunnels were letting zealots get out and back. They were launching attacks against the Romans. Titus says if we go 4.5 miles, 13 fortified strong points around and a continuous new wall, that his 4 legions would be able to wipe this place out in days. The Roman war machine is going to stop everything from coming in. Nothing's coming out. No more attacks. No more use of the secret tunnels inside. And so now the famine in the city. Josephus is writing about this. This is how we know the stories, because he says the streets were filling up with dead mothers and children, the elderly, people that were just too weak to even bury the dead. Families were fighting over scraps of leather, gnawing on belts and sandals. Soldiers were turning on their own neighbors, looking for hidden food. Josephus writes about mothers who tried to sneak out of the city to search valleys for wild grass, and how desperate they were to escape at night and hunting just for anything in the dark slopes outside the walls. The Romans would catch them. Josephus records that those were the crucified people. 500 in a day even were crucified on the slopes high enough so that those inside Jerusalem could see. The Romans ran out of wood for all these crucifixions. You let that land for a second. This is a kingdom built on power, and they can't even get enough crosses to crucify their enemies. Inside, the famine grinds on, and outside, the battering ram starts to hammer the outer wall, middle wall, the inner wall of Jerusalem. And by August, the fighting closes in on the Anatolia fortress and then the sacred precincts of the actual Temple Mount that itself is very well fortified. It's the 9th and the 10th days of the Hebrew month Av. That's late August and September of the year 70 when the Roman legions break the inner courts of the actual temple where Josephus, he's watching it all from the Roman camp. He writes later, but the entire hill on which the temple stood seemed to be a sheet of flame, and that the roar of the fire mixed with screams of the dying, it was loud enough, in Josephus's words, to make the very hills echo back the sound. You can see the valley, the hill that would have echoed back the sound. You look across this Kidron Valley of what remains today. We can only imagine, how glorious this was back in the day, back when originally this Solomon Temple was so beautiful. Always a strategic location because of this topography, but always sacred to the Jews. But here comes Roman fire. Josephus tells us of a Roman soldier acting on no order, driven by some kind of supernatural impulse. He hurled a flaming brand through one of the golden doors of the sanctuary. But other Roman historians tell a different story. They say that Titus gave that order deliberately. Titus calculated that by destroying this temple, crushing the Jewish revolt, at the same time strikes that fatal blow against any monotheistic religion. And that includes Christians. Romans may not have discerned so much the difference between Jews and Christians because it started here. This is the place where Abraham was blessed by Melchizedek, the followers of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the reason why this is part of a trilogy lesson, for it to tie in with lesson 59, 60, and 61, because of this monotheistic, it's the Roman one God problem. Archaeologists believe they've found the cedar beam. This would have been from Lebanon, from Tyre, from the Phoenicians. But that cedar collapsed. It burned enough not to hold up the temple anymore. The gold was melting. The roof collapsed inward. And above the great doors of that inner holy sanctuary, there was an enormous golden vine. Worshippers had been donating golden leaves in grape clusters for generations. Josephus tells us that those golden grape clusters were as tall as a man. That's a quote. And now they pour down through the burning beams in rivers of molten gold. The Roman legionaries plant their standards in the sacred courtyards. They offer pagan sacrifices to their own gods on the smoldering floor in the Holy of Holies. Of course, the priests, rebels, the zealots, the civilians, it's a bloodbath. Everyone is slaughtered. At the southwest corner of the Temple Mount, where for centuries a priest had stood to blow the trumpet, the announce of the Sabbath, the horn, Roman soldiers pry loose this massive cornerstone. It was carved in Hebrew with one phrase, "to the place of trumpeting," and they cast it down. It lands in the street below, where archaeologists will find it 1900 years later, and it still bears that same inscription, that the Sabbath has been silenced. A short walk away in the priestly quarter, archaeologists eventually uncover a single house preserved beneath the rubble. They call it the burnt house. Inside, a thick layer of ash from the September 70, AD 70, they recover a stone vessel, a ritual bath, Roman spear points, and the severed arm of a young woman frozen in ash for us to see. The city is razed all the way to its foundations. And this monotheistic system, the Jewish past, is now wiped out. It's monumental fallout. In AD 71, Vespasian and Titus celebrate. They celebrate. This is a massive triumph. Think of it from the Roman perspective. it's Roman peace. This is the Pax Romana. We need Deorum, Pax Deorum. So there's a celebration in the streets of Rome. And when you parade, you bring Jewish captives, so those that were not killed, and you bring the spoils of war, the sacred temple vessels, the great golden menorah, the golden table of showbread, the menorah. You can spot the menorah, the Arch of Titus. This is right next to the Flavian Amphitheater. You call it the Colosseum. When you visit the Colosseum, you can walk across and go directly through the Arch of Titus. You look up, you see the menorah. This was the celebration as you're entering into the Roman Forum. Everybody would walk past this. And the messages, the stories are carved in. They don't have other ways to tell these stories. Vespasian taking that plunder, using it to fund these very monuments that I was telling you about. The colossal amphitheater for everyone. They tore down Nero's legacy. They built the new one, the Colosseum. This is Roman victory. It's a campaign. They also mint coins. And so the Judea Capta series of coins, Judea conquered, shows a weeping Jewish woman seated beneath a palm tree while a Roman soldier stands over her in full armor. That image travels everywhere across the empire. People look at it. People can see, they can be reminded of Roman power. And Vespasian institutes a new punitive tax. That's the Fiscus Judaicus. He takes the half shekel that every Jewish man used to pay for the upkeep of the Jewish temple, and he redirects it to pay for the pagan temple of Jupiter back in Rome. Salt in the wounds with this imperial decree. You know, a decade later, Emperor Domitian erects the Arch of Titus that I was telling you about, right there with the Roman soldiers hauling off the spoils of war like the coins. This is Rome's earthly kingdom of domination, of victory, of Pax Romana and victory parades and monuments. It is strange, though, for me to tell you that Jewish people don't disappear. This is not the end of the Jewish people being wiped out in Jerusalem. Jews had already spread around. In fact, in Rome, a very old Jewish population, an old Jewish neighborhood, still thrived, still succeeded. There's a rabbi named Yohanan ben Zakkai. He negotiated with the Romans to relocate a Jewish center of learning to the Yavne, the Yavne town where the sages, the scholars, they do something extraordinary. They change over Judaism from the religion of the altar and the temple into a religion of the book, from the culture of piety centered on the temple. Priests now are going to center on the synagogue, the study, the prayer, and sacrifices will come for the prayer. The priests will become rabbis. The temple is mourned, but the people endure and they survive. And the early Christians, they look at the smoking ruins, they see something else entirely. They're reminded of Jesus' own words being fulfilled. They believe Jesus had already become the temple. He had already said he could destroy it and bring it back in 3 days, that the sacrifice, the 3 days of him from the cross to the resurrection, that he is the high priest, direct access to God, no more building is required. This is how kingdoms become classical. This is how scholars are made. It's one lesson at a time. The classical approach is so important to guide you in truth. And I would encourage you at classicalkingdoms.com that we help you stitch all of these lessons together, because with the classical approach, you can learn how to think and what to do. And when you're looking at these ancient times of the first century and you see Roman peace and Roman power and kingdoms, and you know Christianity, Judaism, and all the Abrahamic religions, they all still matter today. And we do want to understand what those beliefs are. You know, Rome destroyed that temple. It was made of stone. But the kingdom built on virtue can't really be burned. I'll let Josephus have the last word here. Flavius Josephus interpreted the destruction of the temple not as Roman triumph over God, but divine punishment, because Jewish zealots and sinners had polluted the holy site and made it unfit for worship. Now, you're a classical scholar, and you know what it's like to feel a weighty lesson like this. You know, there's a certain quiet that falls in the classroom when you understand this story. See, if you feel it, Josephus is working for the Romans now. He's writing the Jewish legacy, the Jewish wars, and possibly some Roman propaganda. Our journey is to find the truth in history, and the eyewitnesses like Josephus tell us alongside the ruins of a once strong kingdom. Thank you for taking the time to learn something that matters in all of history, and that includes your journey, because kingdoms rise and fall, power fades, but virtue endures.